right, so this is going to be kind of a fun special edition of the U.S. Lacrosse Michigan podcast. A couple days ago on Twitter, the UDM official Twitter account tweeted out the Women's Lacrosse Team of the Decade, and I instantly sent PJ and Colin a text and said, when's the men's come out, who's voting on it? And it comes out tomorrow. So right now it is Thursday the 14th, so it's going to come out on Friday the 15th. We're going to record this tonight, probably put it out like Monday of next week. But I have the list, and because you two are, two of the best in the history of the program, history of the state of Michigan, homegrown kids, hometown kids, Michigan kids, I said, Colin, we should get some guys on, and Colin said, do it without me. He gets to be a politician on this one and say, I'm Switzerland. I don't have favorites. I didn't vote for this. This was former players, sent PJ his recommendations, and PJ took the voting and put it together. So, quick introduction of everybody. First one on the line, Chuck Hayes, Charlie Hayes. What does your mother call you?
Charlie.
Charlie? Okay, because I knew you as Charlie, and then the entire team called you Chuck. So what do you prefer to be called?
I don't really mind it. I mean, a lot of my guy friends in high school called me Chuck, and then Chuck kind of stuck when I got to college, so I roll with that most of the time. I think my close friends that have known me throughout my whole life probably call me Charlie, but it's mostly Chuck. It's hard to kind of pay attention to it and see which is most common for me, but yeah.
Fair enough. So Chuck Hayes, we get to introduce as the new assistant coach of Detroit Mercy Men's Lacrosse. So I think I'm the one breaking news on this one. Congratulations. Colin shared the news today that you're officially on staff now.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pretty pumped. It worked out nice. I've been there for the past, 6 years now. So finishing up the MBA in about a month, so it kind of worked out nice, and I couldn't be more pumped to stay around at the school.
Wonderful. So for those that didn't follow Charlie's playing career, he was a do-everything short-stick D midfielder. I still remember tweeting when the All-American team came out and you didn't make it, that you had more ground balls, more caused turnovers, more goals, more assists, and everything than the guys that made first and second team combined. So the three guys that made All-American above you didn't have the same stats that you did. And I still think it's one of the biggest outrages in the world. And when Chuck is not playing, and when Chuck is not coaching, he's playing in the MLL for the Denver Outlaws.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a lot of fun as well. I got the opportunity to get signed by them after the draft. The summer of 2018, so my rookie year was last year, and it was awesome. I couldn't have joined a better organization. Made it to the championship last year, but lost unfortunately. But it was just an outstanding year, so it's just awesome to continue to play right now.
Awesome. Jamie Hebden has stepped away from lacrosse for the time being. He is battling coronavirus and battling exams in med school. But Jamie was recruited out of and I'm sorry, I should mention that Chuck came out of Utica Eisenhower's program. And one of those kids that I always kind of joke about, your public school left, but really, coming from a non-hotbed has done to the pros is amazing. Jamie Hebden, out of Brother Rice, won every possible award you could win in college, whether it was team awards like defensive MVP, academic awards, whether it was Dean's List, President's List, first team All-MAC a couple of times, All-MAC tournament team, as well as at one point you were the record holder or number 2 all-time for caused turnovers in a season.
I was behind Hoopy, so I was just 2.
Yeah, you guys were okay. But Jamie's now in med school down at Wayne State?
Michigan State. And we're waiting for JD Hess to hop on. When he gets here, we'll introduce him too. But then we also have the voice of Detroit Titans lacrosse, John Locy. So I figured if we're going to do this, let's get some Titans on here and let's have some fun and talk Titans. Cool? Sounds good.
All right. So here's how I'm going to roll this out. And I'm going to text Hess while we're sitting here. Do I need to log in somewhere? Yes. Click the link. Okay. So here's the first thing first. We're getting rid of the new logo, and we're going old school. Jamie,
that's old school.
A few guys that still have one of these, but these were the shooter shirts from the 2009 inaugural team. So I'm going old school. I'm repping my Matt Holtz hand-me-downs. Oh, there's JD Hess. Okay, so here's the format. We're going to go through and introduce the honorable mention, get some commentary, and then second team goalie, attack, midi, D, specialist, first team goalie, attack, midi, D, so that we're not going to just dump everything at you at once. We're going to go by position. JD Hess also hopping on the line, the new head coach at Notre Dame Prep High School, Pontiac, Michigan. He came to UDM out of Seaholm as a do-it-all midfielder, attackman, offensive specialist, and after that he picked up the long stick, and after that he was in the face-off wings, and after that he did it everything, and then got a bunch of concussions and joined the coaching staff. So this is going to be fun because I've got old school and Jamie Hebden, I've got recent Chuck Hayes, and I've got Hess, who kind of spanned both of those eras, as you were a freshman on that MAC championship team, and then we're on the coaching staff when Chuck was there. So that's my intros. Want to get started?
Let's go.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen.
Without further ado, buddy.
Yes, sir. So here's the honorable mention list. Can everyone see that? Honorable mention. Andy Hebden, Jamie's little brother. We also have Pat Masterson, Sam Horton, Kyle Beauregard, Cabo, Brandon Davenport, Ben Jokai, Alec Gilhooly, Brett Erskine, and Chris Shivens. First thoughts, any of those guys you thought for sure should have been a first or second teamer?
I think the jury's obviously still out on Erskine. I think he could potentially be a first or second teamer when it's all said and done. My other initial thought is Pat Masterson.
Yeah, I was going to say Pat.
Other than that, I think it looks pretty good. I like Davenport on there. He's kind of an underrated guy in program history.
Davy got credit too. He was the face-off kid, and he lost the starting face-off job and just said, "Then put me on the wing." And he went out there and got
scrapped
on and scrapped for ground balls. I think my shock on there might be the Jokai one, but he didn't have quite the playoff run that another guy had. And I think Andy Hebden, if it wasn't for the injuries, might have been higher up, but that last season or two, he just had the injury bug.
Yeah, he couldn't stay healthy, which is a shame with him being such a big part of the offense there. I think Horton jumps out to me too. He's got a lot of craziness in him. He was always fun to watch.
Yeah, and I agree with you on Pat, but when we mentioned Hoopy led the country in caused turnovers. There goes one spot. The second spot, Pat might just be a victim of the riches at that position in the program's short history.
Yeah, I was going to say that same thing, Drew, and same thing. I mean, Pat was one of the best that I've been around when I played, for sure. I mean, the things that he did was just awesome, but that's really what it comes down to, I think. Like you said, there's just the LSM position for Detroit's been so unreal for forever. So,
and I would
Jamie,
say,
why don't we get Jamie in there? Talk about Jamie. What do you think? You got your brother on there, buddy.
I know.
You got to say, we got to get you to say something. So when Andy Ice watches this, he's got to interject at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think when he came in as a freshman, and we had some injuries happen, and then he stepped up and was on that first line, and kind of filled a hole with Drummond and Bernie. And I think he did really well in the first year. And, as you said, the injury bug kind of got him. But he's still – I think, honorable mention, good spot, second team. I mean, there's some pretty he played attack and midfield kind of all over the place. But, if you put him in his true midfield, like his midfield position, it's tough because, we're pretty – for three spots, we got a pretty solid depth across 10 years. So – yeah. Right. It's tough to penetrate those first six spots.
Other thing about Andy too is those last 2 years and really that senior year for him where we were really struggling offensively, he was the guy that defenses were keying on. So if you put him on another team in another year, who knows what kind of numbers he's putting up.
Yeah. I went back and watched that MAC championship game, and he really was demolition man on that midfield line, crashing the crease, just getting beaten up in there on the crease because everyone was looking out for Bernie's big gun. And Scotty was doing his thing, but then Andy was just demolition man. So the only other thing I'd say is Pat Masterson, I might give him the bump because he was such an incredible leader within the program. It wasn't just his on-the-field play, it was his leadership. But I'm going to leave that as is, and we're going to go on to second-team goalie. Any shock there?
I mean, it's a toss-up. You could throw him either day.
I was really interested to see the goal.
It was going to be them switched either way.
Yeah.
Depends on the day, to be honest.
I think you look at AJ, and there's probably no better 3-game run as a goalie in UDM history than that.
The save he makes from his butt in the final is still one of those, like, I remember literally jumping out of my chair screaming at the computer because it was streamed online, and my wife looking at me like, what is wrong with you? And I just could not believe that save.
That was still to this day, and I'm obviously biased, but the most ridiculous goalie performance I've ever seen in a game. Just the true definition of standing on your head. But I think we probably all know who first team is now that second team has been announced. But Jamie, you were saying too, like you could interchange these two guys any day of the week, and I think we're going to be feeling pretty good about our chances against anyone with both of them.
Yeah. No arguments there, and I think AJ did a lot to mentor the first team guy as his coach.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think the underrated thing about AJ was his haircut in that MAC championship, with the circle in the back and the beard connected to the inverse mohawk thing.
Man, I watched that entire game right when this quarantine got put in place. I watched that entire game, and when I saw that, because I wasn't on that team, but when I saw that video or the camera was on AJ, I was like, I was dying. That was the most unreal haircut I've ever seen.
I mean, AJ was the true definition of party on, which that's what that year was, man.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right, next we got the attack. Second team. Brandon Beauregard, Mark Onstead, Howie Mandel, Seth Mandel.
So I was really, really when I was thinking about this before I hopped on, I was wondering, is Seth Mandel going to get the credit he deserves? I think he's another one of those guys that for whatever reason gets forgotten about. Last year he gets left off the first and second team All-MAC after leading the MAC in goals. That dude is just a machine, so I'm happy to see him crack this list. Ansted's another guy that probably goes down as top 3 talent to ever come through the program. Just is a shame that some injuries cut his career short as well. And Brandon, I mean, anchored that attack unit for a few years there and was always pretty steady, 2-3 goals a game type of guy.
Yeah, going off what JD said about Seth, that's kind of nice to see because just like JD said, he was always kind of the odd guy out of that attack line for a few years. But when you look at his numbers, that when the year comes to an end, it's pretty unreal. So
yeah,
the numbers kind of go and the stats go to prove his talent for sure.
I say this teasingly because I love the kid, but of anybody that got left off first team, I think Brandon Beauregard's going to be the most competitive. That's like, that is wrong. I was a first teamer.
Yeah, he'll fight you.
Don't let him see this.
Hey, not my list, not even PJ's list. PJ took the feedback and just put it together. One thing that I think I should go back and mention, because we had a sidebar conversation, I didn't have him on the list, but we did have Joel Matthews as also accepting votes or also considered for votes. Joel did not make first or second team. It sounds like a lot of it was phenomenal talent, but short career. And with the short career, it's kind of one of those what-if stories. So he was in that kind of also to be named later that I should have named in the beginning.
Yeah, unfortunately, him leaving early, it leaves a lot to be, questioned and desired to know what could have been. Because playing with him, he was just unbelievable talent.
Yeah,
I think you could probably argue that the Maney, Shane Adams, Joel Matthews trio would go up against any other trio in program history.
Quite possibly, yeah. All right. Second team midfield, Sean Burney, Dennis, and Garippa. Now, this is the only one that I kind of went, I don't really agree with putting Garippa as a midfielder. I think he should be in that short stick D midfielder category, which we do have, but they put Garippa in there, they put Troy Dennis in there, and they put Sean Burney. Thoughts?
I think I'll talk about Sean Burney. I think that's a pretty solid spot for Sean. Again, like we talked about with third team at the midfield line, kind of with Andy. It's so tough. There's been so many good midfielders over the years. Sean was awesome. I mean, for all 4 years, and starting on that first line his freshman year in 2015 all the way through, he's done so much. So it'd be interesting to see that first line group. Obviously, we got Scott Drummond and those guys, but and Sean's older brother Mike. So it's tough for him to get to that first team midfield. But I'd like to see Sean there. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think there's potential we could see another Bernie on this list in a couple of years.
Hey, you know what? We invited him on the call tonight, and he's going to his in-laws to pick up something for the wedding shower. So, Mike, we love you, but you're not here, so we're going to make fun of you.
That's weird.
Why don't we have a short stick D-mid spot?
We're getting to that. So, second team
well,
D.
So Garippa, obviously stud D-mid, and then same. I would even kind of categorize Troy in the same spot, especially towards the end of his career. I mean, you talk about the long stick midi position. We've had some pretty unreal short stick D-middies come through too with those two guys, and then obviously Chuck. It's pretty. It's a wealth for sure for us. I remember when I did make the switch to LSM, going out every ship with Troy and Garippa, I didn't have to worry about anything. It was nice.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those like where they do the all Big Ten team in basketball, and they don't really have a true point guard, a true two guard, a true small. You know, they'll put 2 point guards on there. I think this was kind of that. They wanted to get Dennis and Garippa on there, so they put them at the second team midfield. That's my hunch. But again, not my list. I get to just say it's not Colin's list. It's not my list. We're just having the conversation.
Yeah.
All right, Andy. Defense, second team, McLean, Dwyer, and Kane. Jamie, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played with two of the guys, but I know John Dwyer. He was a rock in the back line with us, and you know, kind of the center hub communicator. Just do all cerebral mind at the game. You know, great person to play with. Just from watching, you know, McLean and Will Kane, you know, kind of I would say Will Kane more like Dwyer, you know, and more cerebral, a student of the game. Definitely not, you know, as aggressive on ball, and kind of how he played, like how Dwyer played. And McLean, I think he's a, you know, aggressive on ball guy. You know, not playing with them is tough to evaluate just from watching, but they're all real solid, you know, defensemen. And I like that list. I don't know, depending on who's on the first one, I guess I can comment on where I think people should be. But for a second team list, I like it.
I'll leave it there. I will say this about Dwyer. I think he was incredibly underrated and overlooked because on that team, you knew what you had in Hoopy. And he was just going to be that cause turnover machine, that you know, offensive threat. Jamie's the team captain. Jamie gets the hardest assignment on the hardest attackman every single game and is going to be in that mano-a-mano battle. You've got AJ in net, who's got to stand on his head. But Dwyer seemed to be that big brother that just said, I'm in charge back here. You guys listen to me. Let me run the show, and you guys do your jobs. So you can't have the success that you guys had to let Hoopy freelance, because a lot of his stuff was freelance and improvised and out of position. A lot of what Jamie had to do was to draw the toughest assignment of the day. And then AJ's got to make saves. So you just, like I said, then you have Dwyer that goes, okay, guys, come with me. I got it from here.
Yeah, glue guy. Just glue the defense together, really.
Kane is similar in that regard too. I mean, if you look at the defenses throughout both Kane's and Dwyer's 4-year careers, the numbers from a team defense perspective are usually pretty damn good, and that doesn't happen without a guy like a Dwyer or like a Kane, who I think Jamie said it is a very similar type of player to Dwyer, just the rock, the glue, the quarterback, and both guys are ridiculous in the clear game. If you go back and watch that MAC championship, Dwyer is quarterbacking, the entire clear, literally pointing guys out, stick in one hand, pointing, guys, telling them where to go. So, yeah, I think all three of those guys are studs, and McLean, from what I'm hearing, is coming back for another year. So that's really good news for us.
Jamie, did you ever see Dwyer smile in 4 years?
Yeah. Rarely, but I did.
Okay.
After hours, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm ripping through these quick because Jamie's got to study for a pediatrics exam or something for med school. So we're going to rip through them quick, and then we can always go back, the four of us, when Jamie hops off, and talk more in depth. Specialist second team, Seibel at D-mid, Pauly, and then Damian Hicks at face-off.
Chuck, thoughts? This is your expertise.
Yeah, this is Chuck. We're looking at you.
Yeah, all right. I think that's pretty solid. I mean, again, it's tough for me. I mean, when I came into Detroit in 2015, Seibel was a fifth-year guy, and I had heard just phenomenal things about him and how much of a stud he was. But unfortunately, he did go through all those knee injuries. And even when I was a freshman, I mean, he was banged up. He was playing all year, but the ACL injuries probably hurt him in the long run. Phenomenal athlete. Obviously, his speed was unreal, and his ability to stick with guys was pretty unmatched. And then with Paul, I mean, I think we all know who's on the first team in that position, but in Paul too, he's still got he's got another year at least. I think he might have 2 years left. So Paul's absolutely a stud. It's crazy to see him. His freshman year with us was my senior year, so he was behind Masterson. But right when Pat left, what Paul did was just, he's been unreal. He won LSM of the year his sophomore year, and he'll win that. I mean, I don't even think I'll jinx it or anything, but he'll win that the whole time he's here. So he's just absolutely a ground ball machine. And what he can do in transition too, especially nowadays, and how the game's been evolving in transition, he's such a threat in transition. I mean, even in our 5 or 6 games this year, we were keeping him on in the clear because of how good his stick was and how much of a threat he is. So, but obviously, who's on first team, I think we probably know who that is. So it's tough to beat that with all the stats that player's put up.
I would say that the Manuzak Masterson debate is probably the closest.
Yeah.
And for totally different reasons. They're two completely different players. Pat and Chuck were literally running, the defense for a couple of years. They were essentially the coaches of the D. And, Paul's that offensive weapon on top of the ground ball hawk and picking up teams, number one middies. So, it's crazy to see all these names and think back, man, we've really had some studs go through that.
Yeah, I think you're completely right, though. That's probably the biggest question mark in my mind. Probably more biased for me because I played alongside those guys, but they're totally different style of players that it's hard to kind of make that. It's kind of like that flip maybe with AJ and Weber, I guess. But there's nobody I'd rather play on a line with than Pat Masterson. So it's one of those things where I can just rely on him and his leadership, like you said, Drew, and it's off the charts. So
I got a quick Damian Hicks story. One of the most legendary things I can remember, Damian getting his per diem spring break money and using it to get a silverback gorilla tattoo.
Oh my gosh.
Oh boy.
Don't let the NCAA hear that one, but
statute of limitations is up, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't think they got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah. So I guess I'll say a couple things. Tommy Seibel, again, horrible knees, biggest knee brace hunk of metal on the planet on his knee, and he's still the fastest guy in the field. His speed was ridiculous. And I would even venture to say, well, Pat gets you the leadership and Hoopy gets you the stats. If I'm looking for the most consistent guy, on ball, off ball, help, wing on a face-off, on the clear offense, I think Paulie might be the most consistent along all those areas where the other guys might be a 10 on something but only a 4.5, 3 on something else. Hell, they were 12s on a 10-point scale on some of that stuff. Okay.
And the other thing with Paul, real quick, Chris, is that he's got another year. So if we're having this discussion and we're doing this, a year or two from now, you could see some movement.
Yeah. I got a good Paulie story that we'll save for the second half of this when we come back around. I'm pretty sure Chuck knows Sean Higgins' original comment about when he was signed. All right, so first team goalie, Weebs. No surprise there.
Yeah, it's hard to top the dude that won a silver medal with Team Canada a couple years ago.
Details.
And I will say this, and I mean this as a hell of a compliment. There were seasons where we weren't sure if he would have the maturity and the grades to make it through another year. And he's really one of those kids that you saw grow up and mature from just, I can stop a lot of shots, I'm a great goalie, to a graduate, a professional, a really not just what he did on the field, but his growth as a man, I think, is a testament to guys like you as his team leaders, Chuck, as well as, Coach Colin and some of the guys that rode him and were the foot up his behind to get the best out of him, not just on the field, but off the field.
I think it's a testament to the school. I mean, the environment at UDM, you put him in a different place, in a bigger school potentially, and he doesn't end up where he is. Success on the lacrosse field and also success, off the lacrosse field as well. So I think it's a testament to everything you mentioned, Chris, and the institution as a whole.
Yeah, and I believe now he's not a Mountie, but he's a police officer in Canada, isn't he?
Yeah, pretty sure he is.
Yeah, I think he's provincial police or something.
Another testament that we got to give credit to, and Drew, and you mentioned it, but is Colin. I think if Weber had come around 3-4 years prior to when he did, he might not have had all the success that he did from an on-field standpoint, off-field standpoint. He was a key part of the teams that were really starting to buy into the culture and the program that, Colin was trying to build. And we had a couple rough years in there as far as wins and losses. But, I don't know if Weebs has as much success, if he was even there a year before he was. So it was great timing, and, kudos to him for buying in, and kudos to Colin, obviously, for doing what he had to do from a program standpoint.
All right, moving on to the attack. Chewy, Shane, and Alex.
Yeah, I don't think – you can't really argue it. My own –
Jamie's got a big grin on his face.
Yeah, we should.
From the long pole perspective, Jamie's got
go ahead, Jamie.
No,
I can't hear a word you're saying. You're breaking up. You got to start over. Can anyone else hear him?
No.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
Okay, so I never played with Van Galen, but Shane and Manny are a fun group to play against. Let me tell you, not just from like their skill, but the smack talking, and just from practice. My senior year, it'd be me and Dwyer against Shane and Manny, and it would just be a constant like bickering match between us. And Manny's this slippery, like pretty big. He's bigger than me. Slippery guy that somehow could find his way to the goal. And he had great vision. He could like dodge into you and then back off, and you'd find some passing lane that you didn't think was there. And then Shane, pure finisher, silky smooth hands, anything in tight, he was going to get you. He always loved to go catch the ball on the wing and the left side and go have you approach and then go under and then just little head fake to the goalie and score. But, it was always a blast to play with them. And then to play, have them play with you against another team, you're guaranteed that you're like, okay, these two could definitely put something together, in a dire situation. You'll get something out of them.
Yeah, and I'll just to add one thing. I mean, I know Maney pretty well, him being a GA when I was playing and stuff, and watching those older games though, I can definitely see that Maney is just probably one of the more competitive dudes that I've met, even not even playing against him in a real game or anything, but he's just one of the most competitive dudes. So, I mean, and he's up there on the stat sheet as well, obviously. So.
Okay, yeah, he's up there on the stat sheet. You want to talk about his competitiveness? He's a big UNC basketball fan. I'm a big Michigan State basketball fan. Anything on Twitter that mentions UNC ranking higher than State, he will tweet me in the middle of the night, non-basketball season. Drew, did you see that? Like, dude, knock it off. Neither one of us went to those schools. I don't care.
Yeah, that dude, he likes to talk smack. Going back to that MAC championship that I think we've all watched a few times since this quarantine's been going on, we score the tying goal, and Maney turns around to the Siena bench and just points. Don't know who he's pointing to, but that he was always on point with the smack talk. And then watching him and Shane play together, some of the stuff they did was pretty ridiculous. It's kind of like Van Galen and Erskine. Some of the feeds that those guys had, it's like telepathy. You think how do you know that he's there at that time? But all three could definitely fill it up.
I don't think that there is a better duo to get inside a goalie's head than those two.
Oh yeah.
I remember we played Michigan my senior year, and it was kind of on and off, shower, whatever. But the final time that we went into the locker room before the game was canceled is as we're running off the field, those two are chirping the goalie from Michigan. I can't remember the kid's name, but just chirping him all the way into the locker room. And then all of a sudden a brawl breaks out underneath in the tunnel of the big house. And it's all based on Manny. All of a sudden, Manny comes out we're pulling people away. And all of a sudden, funny story is I grab guy is our defensive coordinator, came from Michigan, Clarkston kid.
Oh, Jeff Turner.
I find myself grabbing, because he was a manager, grabbing Turner and pushing him back, and all of a sudden Manny comes flying from the Michigan locker room into our pile, and I'm like, "Where were you?" He's like, "I was just in there." And I was like, "Oh." Yeah. So if you want a two that will get inside a goalie's head, it's those two.
All right, I gotta get Jamie out of here quickly, so we're gonna come back and tell Alex Manny stories later. We'll finish stories about the Big House game as well. When I got to be soccer mom and go buy oranges and bananas and Cliff Bars for the whole team. Okay, Scotty Harris.
Ooh,
Mike Burney.
That's an old name.
Scotty Drummond.
Yeah. I was wondering how far back we were gonna go.
10 years.
Scotty Harris.
That's a decade.
Jamie, that's your boy.
Yeah, I know.
The pride of Celine.
Yeah. Harris was fun. Harris is fun to play with. He was tall, lanky, kind of slippery and like a Manny type, but he was also he always had like a non-traditional, skills fundamental. So he had like the low carrying stick, wasn't always looking like he was kind of ready to pass, and then all of a sudden he'd throw this like random pass that you're like, how the hell did you just throw that from like down below his ankles? And it's like, wow. And then he could take control of the game, and he was a big part of the offense, in the first, in the 4 years that he played, and he made a big impact. I think he deserves to be up there.
All right, Mike Burney. I mean, again, we're gonna pick on him because he's not here, but in reality, just as AJ had the best 3-game run in the playoffs, that junior year from Mike, he had so many big goals.
Sophomore year.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sophomore.
Where it's going to overtime, if we can find Bernie up top, game over. And he did it time and time again. And that was a fun time because you guys were getting a lot of media, and you were getting on ESPN. You were getting on the cover of Lacrosse magazine. Wasn't he on there for working out, or was that Troy? Somebody was on one of the covers for a workout. But yeah, Bernie, I think we can kind of save that for the second part about why ultimately he's arguably the best midfielder program history until his littlest brother comes and breaks all his records and, mops that up. But Scotty Drummond is a guy that I think, started at a D3 program where I think he started at Roanoke, and then transferred to D1. And that doesn't always work out, but he fit in perfectly with this team in that offense.
Yeah. I think he came the year, I think it was Carwick was here as an offensive coordinator, and that's when he came. And I think that really helped him. So I think Carwick was just a great teacher of the game, really helped Drummond kind of focus in on his game. I think that helped out a lot.
Bernie and Drummond too are like the perfect 1-2 punch, with Bernie obviously getting by with speed, power, athleticism, where Drummond was usually making stuff happen off the wings. He had those shakes down pretty good. And his game was pretty creative, kind of like Scott Harris. So, when those two guys were on along with Maney and Shane, those were some fun offensive games to be a part of.
And I'll say this about Scotty, how many of those highlight reel goals that we saw from Alex, or we saw from Shane, or we saw from Bernie started with something that Drummond threw the double, made the right pass, found the right guy, and it all fell into place.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Defense. Jamie, I don't think you're shocked to see yourself on that list.
Yeah.
Paulie Battetti, Alex Aikens.
No arguments here. I mean, Jamie, the numbers speak for themselves, but Jamie is a true leader, lead by example type of guy. Said what needed to be said, but at the end of the day, he was always the guy that was doing the little things right. And as a freshman, he was an easy guy to follow. Paul, probably Jamie might argue this, but probably our best on-ball guy that's come through. I got to stir it up a little bit.
He's more athletic than me.
And he could really get out after guys. Classic, high pressure, meathead Long Islander, wore tank tops and diamond stud earrings and gold chains to practice.
Oh, yeah.
And then Aikens, another pretty ridiculous on-ball guy. You get him in the open field too, running transition, which he's really improved the last couple of years. His stick and the ability to run transition makes him a threat on that side of the ball too.
If you're going to look at Aikens, I think he's one of those forgotten guys because he didn't have the flashy stats. And, I still think it's complete crap that he makes first-team All-MAC his junior year. And then second year, he plays even better his senior year and makes second-team All-MAC his senior year. I think if he would have been a two-time first-team All-MAC guy, this would have been even more of a no-brainer. But he's just so talented. And Paulie was he was that lovable meathead that we had to have back there. Jamie, I think you were more the cerebral defenseman, and I think Paulie did some of it with just more brute force and will. But definitely talented.
He could clear the ball. I wasn't the best at clearing the ball, and he was more athletic than I was.
You going back to Aikens too. You go back, watch any game that we ever played against Monmouth. Aikens matching up against Bryce Wasserman, who is actually a pretty good pro right now in the MLL. Aikens had that guy's number, and that was always such a fun matchup. I remember that MAC semifinal game that we came back and kind of stole from them a few years back. Wasserman entered the game with 99 career goals. Aikens covered in the whole game. Wasserman ended the game with 99 career goals.
Yeah.
So, that shows what Akins can do.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that briefly too. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Like Akins, his footwork for a close defenseman it's crazy. And then I think that's the biggest thing, like you were saying, Drouin. Like I honestly feel like what JD said, the reason that he might have fell off kind of that second year after first team is because like that 1 year in 2018 when he was first team, the MAC had some very good attackmen that year, and we just put Akins on them, and Akins absolutely shut them down, like completely. Yeah. So, like Bryce Wasserman, phenomenal attackman. Akins shut him down to 0 goals. I don't even know if he had an assist. And then kind of that next year, there was not really any crazy attackman in the MAC where Akins could totally shut down. And I think, like you talked about earlier, his numbers don't necessarily stick out as much, so it was harder for him to get that recognition. But he can foot for foot, he can stay with anyone in the country, hands down.
All right, specialists. I don't think we're going to have many shocks here. Chuck, you're our short stick D midi. Hootby, and then Jarzembowski got the face-off X.
Nah. No debate.
This is probably the biggest no-brainer group of them all, honestly.
Yeah, and I really like to see Jars on there. He'll be coming back for another year. But I really like to see Jars on there because outside of the face-off thing, too, just winning face-offs and percentages, he's such a good lacrosse player as well. And he's one of those guys where I'm really hoping he can kind of become the first guy to truly be drafted and go, like, really get the name out there, and whether it's the MLL or PLL, because that kid can play anywhere for sure.
Yeah. I still remember doing his high school games at All-American as an official. And just his focus and his competitiveness. And he's just destroying these kids in leagues. Doesn't matter if they're Rice kids or they're public school or they're Catholic League or their youth programs or their college recruits. Jars never smiled and was such a lunch pail, I'm here to do a job guy, even in rec leagues. His focus and his intensity, I think, is really amazing. And if you go back to some of the guys we're talking about, Logan next year in goal, Jars at the face-off X, Paulie at long stick midi. That's 3 pretty good specialists you're bringing back, plus adding in some fifth-year senior guys. I think Detroit might be exciting next year, and Jars is going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, it's funny. We were it was going to be Akins and Jars' last year, so as much as the end of the season kind of sucked, it's great news having both those guys back, because our big question marks, honestly, when looking at the roster and depth chart for next year was kind of that face-off guy and kind of that third close defense spot. So to have those 2 back is going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So real quick, we gotta talk Chuck at least.
Yes, please.
So I don't think I've ever seen a defense more often than not put a short stick on the number 1 midfielder, and that's what we did those last 2 years with Chuck, pretty much every single game. And I think for me, watching on the sidelines where it was really like, holy smokes, this guy is really good, was the Ohio State game at Wisner, where I'm pretty sure Chuck led the game in caused turnovers and ground balls. It was pretty unreal to see what he was able to do on a day-to-day basis. I mean, short stick D-mids get dodged on all the time, and Chuck is getting dodged on all the time, and he's putting the ball on the ground, picking it up, turning upfield, running transitions, scoring goals, throwing feeds. It was really a do-it-all, type of guy.
Yeah, I thought my senior year I had a good group of D mids. Seibel, Troy, Garippa. You can even throw Spooler in there as an athlete, and I would definitely take Charlie Hayes and throw him in there and make him even 10 times better.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because coming in my freshman year, I heard so much about those guys, and even watching those 2013 games or whatever, like those guys were studs. So, I guess it's just those guys. It would have been nice to play alongside those guys for sure too. That would have been something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's Chuck. Probably, the one of the few pieces that we were kind of missing those last couple of years for you at least was, no disrespect to any of those guys that were running D mid, but you look at some of those earlier teams where we would go 4 or 5 deep on the D mid and it was really solid. If maybe we have a little more D mid depth, especially here last year and the year before that, who knows what happens. But all in all, I mean, I think, again, this specialist group is probably the biggest slam dunk there is. And, we didn't even talk about Hoopy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, guy was an animal machine. The best way I can kind of describe him is, you needed something to be like, if you're down the rut, and you needed something to go your way, somehow he would find something. Don't know what it would be. It would be a random ground ball, or it would be a goal, or it'd be some takeaway. It was something. He just had like a little switch that would just magically do something. And, he would just, turn the game around. A lot of the times it was a big ground ball or something that he did, or a takeaway that he did, that it really changed a lot of the games that I can remember.
I think the craziest I've ever seen a UDM sideline go was that play he had against Notre Dame, Jamie, where he strips the dude in the middle of the field, toe drags, throws, I'm not kidding, a 60-yard lob pass over the top to Seibel.
Yeah.
Feeds it over to Brandon for a slam dunk to put us up like 3 or 4. I mean, he would just do stuff like that when you needed a big play to happen. He would always find a way to do it. It was pretty incredible to watch.
Yeah, he's a vacuum cleaner at the face-off checks.
Yeah.
Just a vacuum cleaner.
And he just had that low, slow gait where it almost looked like he didn't have a collarbone. He just had those long, gangly arms.
Yep.
And you never would look at him and go like, that's a guy that's going to win a race. That's a guy that's going to be – but, damn it, he just got the job done. And his stats were off the chart. Again, led the nation in caused turnovers, every award possible. And it wasn't just getting big numbers against – the first year programs like a Jacksonville or something like that. He was doing that against Ohio State. He was doing that against Notre Dame. He was doing that, on just all over the place. Jamie, it's 9:50. We've kept you way past your studying.
Yeah.
I want to go back and talk a little bit more about some of these guys. If Chuck and JD want to stay on, but Jamie, stay safe, please. I know that you're doing all kinds of COVID stuff in your day job and you're still studying, so we love you. Hang in there.
All right, see you guys.
Later, Jamie.
All right. So going back through this list now that we've kind of been through the whole thing, John Locy, any high-level thoughts, opinions on some of the people on the list or that aren't on the list from your opinion? And then from there, I'll start going through some of the more one-by-one stuff again.
No, I mean, I was, when I first saw the list, and then as everyone was going through it, I mean, typically you're going to have, when you do this type of a list in any team sport, over 10 years, you're going to have some just, debates that jump out, right? You're always going to have that, well, this should have been that and that should have been that. But, I think it's a testament to the, to the 10 years of lacrosse where, I think everybody's where they should be. For the most part. I mean, I'm excited. I know we talked about it before, but with the guys coming back next year, I think that's exciting to see them on this list. Logan's not even on this list, and that was kind of the one where I'm thinking, all right, if we're doing this a year from now and we're going back 10 years, is he going to crack this list? But overall, I think it's pretty clean. I think it's pretty clean.
Logan started off so strong, especially with as a sophomore getting, Mac was it defensive player of the year and first team goalie. But he doesn't have that AJ Lavelle playoff run, and he doesn't have that Weber longevity and stats. I think Logan, if obviously starting off this was the decade of the 2010s with him kind of being at the end of that and starting the 2020s. if we do the 2020 list, it's hard for me to think of anybody but Logan getting first team right now. But when we go back and do the 25-year team, does he supplant AJ or Weber based on a playoff run? I think it's a question that is still open-ended.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think definitely, like, it's just so hard for him to crack those top two guys. I mean, the stats that they had and the saves that they made were just completely unbelievable, that it's just hard for Logan right now. I think he will. I mean, he's got, even with this year ending, he could have a full 2 years left for sure, and he could do a lot in that time. So, yeah, you never know.
AJ is the classic case of that 3-game run, like, cementing his legend in UDM lore just because of how ridiculous he played. And then Weebs, obviously, I think from a talent standpoint, I don't know if we'll ever get – I hope we do, but I don't know if we'll ever get another goalie that has that much talent. So, Logan, if he can anchor a nice playoff run that ends in a MAC championship, I think that argument becomes very real for him to crack one of these two teams. But I think it's going to take something like that to make that happen.
And here's a good thing that Logan's got going for him too. Some of those teams, Weber really had to carry those wins. There wasn't as much talent. There's some transition stuff going on, and Weber had to carry the team. Logan's got a really good squad in front of him coming back. And if they're going to win a MAC championship, he's going to have to play well, but he's not going to have a 3-game stand like AJ did to get him there.
Right.
He might still do it, but I don't think they have to rely on him come on, going into that MAC, I think you guys were the 3 seed?
No, we were the 4. We started the year 0-6. We had to win our last 2 games of the year to even get into the tournament. We were 3-9 going into the MAC tournament, which was ridiculous.
Yeah. Couple stories real quick. I want to go back to Paulie. Have you guys, I'm sure, heard Stinson Meller, our friend Sean Higgins, what his comment was to Colin when he found out that Paulie was coming to UDM?
Yeah, I've heard that story.
Yeah, we don't let him live it down, but you got to get that out to the public.
So Paulie commits, and Higgins says something to the effect of, "Why are you wasting a scholarship on this kid? Why are you wasting a roster spot on this kid? What do you see in him?" Higgins had seen him play against his son in high school. In Higgins' defense, De La Salle didn't know how to use Paulie, and he was a one-man wrecking crew in, I think, his zone defense, where they tried to have him do everything, and he wasn't really showing in games in high school what he might become. And so that first practice, he goes out and he bangs one of the returning starters and picks up a ground ball and clears the thing and behind the back this and that. And ever since then, Higgins always said, "Clearly I have no idea what I'm talking about, so never listen to me."
Yeah,
that's the moral of that story.
Yeah. Sean Higgins, not a fan. Just want to get it off my chest.
Paul is one of those classic like diamond in the rough guy. Like, Chuck, that was you too, man. Coming out of Eisenhower is pretty insane.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Just I kind of have that relationship with Paul. I mean, it's hard to get noticed when you're at the De La Salles and the Eisenhowers when you're kind of farther north like that. So just hard to notice. And even when you're playing against not so good teams, if you do some good stuff and score goals and cause turnovers, it gets still kind of like he's playing against not so good competition and all that stuff. So it's definitely hard to get noticed, but Colin does a fantastic job. I mean, just unreal being able to notice the positive traits in everyone and know who's going to make it and who can handle it at the next level for sure.
Yeah.
I think sorry, one last thing about Paul is I think next year, obviously with another year of growth and development and maturing and knowing the defense and all that good stuff is only going to make him better. But you kind of look at the roster with Brunius coming back from his injury and likely, taking one of those starting spots down low, that bumps JP Petahoff up to the LSM spot, which is going to give Paul some much needed burn, on the sidelines to get back out there and to do his thing. I know this year, Chuck, you guys were running him pretty much every shift at LSM. So, he was still having a ridiculous year, but imagine what he's going to be able to do with a couple more minutes of gas in his tank.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I joked about it earlier, but we were struggling with the clear in the first 2 games of the season, so we kind of put together a clear that literally just kept Paulie on. Like, there's no point with his stick skills and his ability to push transition. It almost seems silly to bring him off the field to bring someone else on. So that just definitely goes to show the value in him for sure.
So I want to go back and kind of review this list again. And if I think I have it all right, but if you say that we have 13 guys on the first team, almost half, 6 of them are Michigan-born players, Michigan high school players. Jars from CC, Hoopy's Canadian, Chuck from Eisenhower, Jamie from Brother Rice, Paulie's Long Island, Akins is Carmel.
Yeah.
Okay. Scotty Drummond was Birmingham, Mike Burney, Catholic Central, Harris Celine, and then Maney from Long Island, Shane from Canada. Chewy was Indiana?
Ontario.
Yep.
And then Weber from Canada. So 6 of the 13 guys, Michigan high school players. And as this is the Michigan Lacrosse chapter podcast, I want to recognize that and say this is pretty cool. I don't think you can point to many of the women's teams or the other D1 teams and say that it's homegrown talent in a non-traditional area. I can guarantee Notre Dame doesn't have 6 guys in their first team in the decade from Indiana. I can guarantee the University of Michigan doesn't have 6 guys in their first team from the state of Michigan. Ohio State might have 6 Ohio guys, for sure 6 Canadian guys. But, I think that's definitely a testament to the fact that, you go all the way back to guys like Harris, the Holtzes, the Colins, the Carwicks, the Carl Zimmermans of the world recruiting and finding these hidden gems in Michigan where, that they're coming from non-traditional programs or they're not getting recruited by the big schools.
Right. And that, and that's really what, I mean, that's the, kind of the atmosphere or really the, us against the world, culture that I think the coaches have done to bring guys in here that, as you said, Charlie, just, it's tough to get the looks, scoring goals against second-tier teams. And then you kind of come in there with a chip on your shoulder and say, hey, and Chris Colin's been able to recognize that talent, bring it out, and I think that's what's led to a lot of the success.
So going to the second team, I'm pretty sure Hicks was from New York, but I don't remember where.
Yeah, he's a New York guy.
Paulie's De La Salle. Seibel, I had to look up. Forest Hill Central. Is Kane from Texas?
Yeah, he's from Texas.
Okay. Dwyer CC. McLean wasn't from Michigan. McLean was from New York as well, wasn't he?
No. He's St. Mary's.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Griffith Prep. I don't know where Troy Dennis was from.
He's New York.
New York?
Sean Baldwin.
Mandel was another Indiana kid, I think.
Yep.
Onstad's from Baltimore. Beauregard, Notre Dame Prep. And then AJ from somewhere in Columbus?
Yeah, Dublin.
So, yeah, the
that's
second
7.
team. That's 7. So half of the first and second team all-decade team born homegrown players. And, again, you have some of the traditional powerhouses. You have a Jamie Hebden out of Brother Rice. You've got guys like Jars and Mike Burney out of CC and Sean Burney out of CC. But, yeah, getting a couple guys on here from Notre Dame Prep, getting a couple guys on here from places like Forest Hill Central, from Utica Eisenhower, I think it's a real testament to the coaches over the years, the fact that they've been loyal to the kids in the area that are not only going to earn a spot to play Division I lacrosse, but if they're willing to put in the work on and off the field, they can have success.
Yeah, I think it shows too the amount and wealth of talent that is in Oakland County and Wayne County and Kent County over on the west side of the state. There's so many good players now. And one thing I was kind of wondering when these lists came out was how many guys are going to be from 2010, 11, 12, how many were going to be later on in 17, 18, 19, and it's honestly a pretty good split. So I think it shows the longevity too of just how how much lacrosse has grown in the area. And I mean, we all know that, but for a place like UDM to be as successful as it's been, kind of relying on half the roster being from Michigan it's pretty cool, you know, to look at all these names and really realize that the bulk of most of our teams is homegrown.
And even go back to the honorable mention, Joe Kai out of Walled Lake Central. I don't remember if Davenport was Grosse Pointe North or Grosse Pointe South, and I'm sure that's like the Hatfields and McCoys, the fact that I don't remember that. But, you know, a Grosse Pointe public school kid. Kyle Beauregard, again, from Notre Dame Prep, and then Andy from Brother Rice. Where was Sam Horton from? Was he a hometown kid?
Horton's Okemos.
Okemos, yeah. So,
yep. And Gil Hooley is CC.
Gil was from CC?
Yeah.
Yep.
I knew I didn't like him for a reason. I kid. But yeah, I as soon as I saw that girls tweet go out, here's their all-decade team, it's like, okay, there's Kylie Burney, there's some of the big names, and I just went, okay, who's doing the men's list and where, and who's getting to do the voting. I don't see anything on here which is like, okay, we're all quarantined, we're all doing these lists. They have the best NBA players of all time, and they're ranking guys like Iverson above Isaiah Thomas, and I'm going, no, like, I don't think that's debatable. I don't think there's anything on here besides, like we said, do we flip Weber in AJ? Do we give Pat the nod over Paulie because of the longevity and the leadership? There's nothing. The Dennis Garippa thing versus they're both more pure D middies than offensive middies. Should we give some of the offensive middies more of a nod? Maybe, but nothing on here is making me scream and yell and go, man, they screwed this one up.
I agree. Yeah, I think the biggest question marks, like we said, obviously the goalies could be interchangeable at first and second team. And then I think the LSM situation with Pat and Paul, it's tough for me because Pat was just such a phenomenal player, but they're so different, you know. They're such different players that it's hard to say. And then again, yeah, the second team midfield thing, like with Grippa and Dennis, like maybe, I don't know, JD, what can you say? Like maybe Kyle Beauregard on that second team midfield? That's the only thing.
I think maybe like Kyle or Andy or Gil, but you know, the more I think about it, though, Grippa and Troy were such integral parts of what we were doing as a whole. You know, they were taking almost every defensive midi run along with Seibel. They were so important to those teams that kind of got over the hump. So I think, you know, I'm not kicking and screaming the fact that, yeah, they were short stick D middies. I think their value is, I think it's fair to say that they're on that second team.
So I hope
the word. The word there is value, right? So I was waiting for somebody to say the value, because really, you know, you're placing people onto these lists, no matter what it is, based on their value during that time frame against, you know, the other folks, you know, the other kids who played during that time period. And, you know, to put a short stick D midi, you know, over a full field midi is, you know, that's the role that they played during a great run for you guys, and that's why I didn't question it, because it makes sense. I mean, I think it makes sense.
Well, exactly. Let me share one thing, and I was texting back and forth with PJ, and for those that don't know PJ, he's the SID, I think is the official title for UDM, and has been really a fan and a champion for the lacrosse program the day that it showed up. And again, this isn't his list. He just kind of compiled it from everyone's feedback that he worked with. But his comment was, the spot for Dennis and Grippa can be argued for Kyle Beauregard, Hebden, or Gill, and he could have even dropped Brendan Beauregard back to midfield as well, because he shared some midfield time there, and moved somebody else to attack. So, you know, again, it's kind of like that wingman in basketball. Are you a 2? Are you a 3? Are you a midi? Are you a attackman? Some guys like Andy and Brendan Beauregard spent time at both positions. Yeah, I think we can have a little bit of fun and debate with that. And next time we see, you know, these guys socially or publicly, we can tease them a little bit. And you know, definitely got to pick on Brendan Beauregard for only being second team attack, because that's going to drive him crazy. But you know, I think they did a pretty good job with this. If we're under quarantine and we can have some fun with it, let's have some fun with it.
I don't really have any complaints. I think Erskine is going to be one to watch in the future to potentially hop on. I don't know. I don't know if he's a first teamer. I would love for him to be a first teamer. I think second team is for sure in play for him. But who knows? I mean, that kid's a total stud, total warrior, plays through a lot of pain. And what some people might not recognize with him is his riding ability. The amount of ride back goals that kid creates is ridiculous. So those don't show up on the stat sheets, but he's taking the ball away from defensemen, finding, Seth Mendel's and Van Galen's and guys like that. So he's one to keep an eye on. And then I think, Drew, and you said it too, Ryan Burney, we saw glimpses of what he was able to do this year. I could totally see him cracking, maybe taking one of those grip or Dennis spots. Who knows? But the future is definitely bright. It's a very exciting time.
I think this is going to sound odd to say, but Ryan almost played in the shadow of some of those guys at CC because you had the high-profile Peter Thompsons and you had the high-profile who's the kid at Loyola?
Camish,
yeah. I think it's kind of him getting on campus. We're going to really start to see Ryan really demand the ball and ask for the ball. Fun story, I got to ref the state semifinal, Lake Orion versus CC, when he had the game winner in overtime. I scooped the ball out of the back of the net for his game-winning goal, and it actually rattled around in my truck for almost 8 months before I finally got to see somebody give him the ball. So us refs, we notice stuff like that, and we'll grab a game ball for a kid if it's a big goal.
Sorry, Drew, and you just reminded me at Lake Orion. I want to get Chuck's and Locy's thoughts too, because they've both seen this kid in person a little bit this year. Loken, Lake Orion. What do you think about potential on cracking this?
Yeah, he's a stud, and that's props to you, JD, and thanks to you for getting him on our radar. But yeah, that kid's a stud. I mean, he could definitely get on this list for sure for the next decade team or whatever it is in the future. The difficulty with him is he's almost kind of like one of those guys. He's like I think of it as kind of like a Jabril Peppers. Like he's so good at kind of everything right now that it's been difficult for us to really pinpoint what we need him at or what we want him at. So
really? Okay.
Yeah, so defensively, D-mid wise, when he first came in, I was like, I want this kid to play D-mid. Like I want to make this kid a very good D-mid. But his skills offensively were really grabbing our attention. So he played a lot of games on the offensive side, and then some games he played on the defensive side. So that kid's athleticism and his ability to just run around and make stuff happen is definitely going to give him a possibility to get on this list. But like I said, the biggest thing is kind of pinpointing what he can do and kind of excel at that.
Let's put it this way. I think if you look at North Oakland County, that OAA division that's brought us, Lake Orion, Clarkston, Oxford, Adams, some of those schools where you're getting really good athletes, great football programs, great, basketball programs, wrestling programs, all that stuff. And now you've got a coach like Hebert coaching in Lake Orion, who's put more guys into college than anybody else as a coach in the history of the state. I don't think Loken's going to be a one of one. I think he's going to be one of many coming out of Lake Orion over the next few years.
Yeah, their youth program right now is ridiculous. From a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade talent pool, there's a lot of really good kids coming out of that area. Clarkson too, that, Drouin, and it's cool to see, and then we're getting to the point too in Oakland County where, I think we're starting to shed the label of, okay, Michigan lacrosse players, they're great athletes, but they don't know how to play. They don't have the stick skills. Like that's legit now. We're good athletes and we're starting to figure this game out. And, the sticks are pretty solid too. So it's been really cool to see it grow over the last couple of years.
I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
No, I was going to say, I mean, to that point, JD, I think, that moniker is still there, but when you do something like this, when you break it down and you look at all these guys from Michigan over a decade at UDM, And if someone had the time to do it, I don't, to really go back and say, look at all these Michigan players, over the last 4 or 5 years and what they've done at different places across the country. I think you'd be, pleasantly surprised to see how that would shake out.
Yeah, you look at the top 10 freshman class from last year, top 10 freshmen. I think Donaldson was like number 9, and Alex, face-off kid from Denver, was number 4. So those are two Michigan kids in the top 10 of Inside Lacrosse freshman rankings.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think, too, it's as much as I defend the MHSAA, we're not doing our high school lacrosse athletes many favors, especially on the girls' side, having soccer in the same season as them, having the 300-mile rule. The comment was on the effect of, we don't need to bring the lower boats up in the harbor. We can let these guys still go and do their thing and then try to help these guys at their level as well. I wanted to kind of switch gears real quick away from that. Don't get whiplashes. I'm going completely new topic. This all-decade team was fun because we got to talk about the stats, the numbers, the championships. There's a handful of guys that are never going to make a team like this that I want Chuck and JD to give me their scout teamer. Who's the couple of those guys that was good in the locker room, was good in the weight room, was good on the bus trips, busted his butt in practice, that maybe never saw the field or maybe didn't see the field that much?
Unsung heroes.
Guys what's that?
Unsung heroes.
Yeah. Colin always jokes that at Rutgers he leaned on a stick for 4 years. But, he was the ultimate practice player, teammate. There's a couple guys I have in my brain, but who are those unsung hero teammates that you guys think should be recognized if we had an all-heart team or an unsung hero team?
I'll start with the earlier days, and then Chuck, you can kind of ring up the back if you want. I think just thinking of that 2013 team, the MAC championship team, I know. So I was a redshirt that year. I took a big, role in the scout team. And I'm not saying I should be on this list or anything, but I know that the starters, they'd always tell the bench guys that, we lean on you guys. We're feeding off your energy. Keep it going. And the leaders of that bench crew, Chris Mendel.
Yep.
Chris Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
Tyler Schroer. And Tim Robertson. Those were 4 guys that kind of led that bench crew. That I think that helped the guys on the field quite a bit. That's what they told us, at least. And then thinking a couple years after that, Chuck, I'm probably stealing this one for you, but Michael Turnbull definitely comes to mind. And he got in to a few big spots as a goalie and actually played really well in some big games. But he was always kind of a number 2, and that's a tough situation, I think, for a goalie, especially to kind of know that there's a guy in front of you. But that never stopped Mike from working his butt off in practice. And by the end of his career, he was our long pole on the man down unit. So he still was able to find a role, which is ridiculous.
That's such a funny story that he goes and warms up with the goalies pregame, and then as soon as the game starts, he takes off his chest pad and puts on shoulder pads and arm pads and goes stands with the long stick waiting for man down.
Yeah.
He just wanted to be on the field. So I've got a couple I've got in my back pocket. I want to hear Chuck's unsung heroes.
Yeah, so definitely Turnbull's at the top of the list for sure because of everything you guys said. We also got Travis Farling in my mind too. I mean, he went through some injuries at the end of his career, but once kind of lacrosse was taken away from him because of his injuries, he stuck around and helped the coaching staff and the team with director of operations and all that stuff. But even when he was playing for those 3 years, he was always touching or being so close to cracking that starting role and getting time. Every day he came and practiced hard. So those kind of guys are just they're hard to come by too, guys that like Colin talks about, guys that aren't really touching the field, but every single day they come and bring it. So it might be a little biased by me, but I think because I'm such a close friend with Sparling, but I think him for sure. And then I think Marcus Butters too. Marcus Butters for the whole time that I was there was kind of my number 2 D mid for a while. And again, he's not someone that stands out on stat sheets or gets recognition a lot, but the stuff that he did day to day was so helpful for the team. He's kind of like that. We talked about John Dwyer and Will Kane. Marcus Butters' IQ out on the field was awesome. I mean, he helped me out tremendously in my last 2 years, just being on the same page with him and Pat. And again, just him coming to work and working hard in the weight room and trying to improve himself every day is awesome to have on the team. So those 3 guys for sure. And then obviously, I mean, JD for sure. He doesn't want to mention himself, but kind of the same situation as Sparling. I mean, JD was playing unreal minutes, tons of minutes his first 3 years, and then obviously with concussions, had to be sidelined. But the stuff that he did for our program, I was able to kind of look up to JD, kind of filling his shoes with director of ops and graduate assistant. The stuff that he did for us was awesome. Kind of just me watching Alex Maney do that kind of stuff and then JD do it. So JD helped our program out a ton even after playing. So those guys are kind of my main guys that stand out to me. And I will mention Jack Harrop too, obviously. Jack Harrop, yeah. I think he could be number 1 kind of on that list, honestly. So I got the chance to play with Jack for a couple of years and coach Jack the past few years, but Jack Harrop is the ultimate team guy. He's kind of that one guy that once every freshman class comes in, Harrop is kind of their go-to guy for anything they need. And again, he has not gotten a lot of minutes. He got some good minutes last year before the season got ended soon. But, I mean, he's just the ultimate team guy. Definitely an unsung hero every day coming to work and just being a great locker room guy for sure.
So you kind of nailed most of my list. I'm going to pick on JD Hess real quickly. I used to have an old Twitter account, which was my alias from the M Live boards, the Reg Hartner one. And I don't think JD knew who I was, but he knew I was connected with the coaches. And he used to tweet and DM me to say, hey, I'm going to be on campus next year. Who do you think? What do you think I should work on? Do you have any advice for me? Or hey, I think that I might be able to break the lineup if I pick up a long stick. Just he always wanted to get feedback, positive feedback on what do I need to do. So I was really sad when JD had his concussions and couldn't play anymore because I saw him with the passion from he's the wide receiver at Seaholm, he's the do-it-all football player, now he's going to give it the lacrosse career a run. I think JD definitely is at the top of that list. Sparling, another guy where his sophomore year at Novi, he was playing at the Wolverine War Camp, and I saw him play, and he was the most physical guy in the field by far. Yeah. And I went and grabbed Colin. I'm like, you got to check out this kid from Novi. And Colin was like, stupid long hair mullet thing, Sparling? It's like, oh, yeah, he's coming there. I'm like, already? He's like, oh, he doesn't know it yet, but he's coming here. He's a Detroit player. Yeah. And Travis has been one of those guys as well. Not to continue the injury chain, but I think Nick Boynton was another one of those guys that really team guy, and when it didn't go his way physically, picked some stuff up. For me, one guy I'm surprised wasn't said. Another goalie, I think Connor Flynn was one of those guys that was just the ultimate teammate. In standing in Weaver's shadow, knowing that I might not get a game, I might never get a game. Man, that kid showed up, whether it was the weight room, the locker room, road trips, game day. Connor Flynn was just everywhere. And I think he's one of those glue guys that a program doesn't succeed unless you have a Connor Flynn in there.
Yeah, he also was another guy that really took Weber under his wing, where he could have just said, screw this, I'm not starting, why would I help this kid? But Flynn would go out of his way. Flynn would class check Weber, make sure Weber was in class, helping him with his homework, making sure he was getting all the things done that he needed to get done. Reliable dude, great guy to have in your corner. I thought of two more while you guys were talking. I think Mike Sforza.
Yeah.
Really good glue guy from the fact that, he came in as a face-off man. Never really got that starting job. Worked out a ton, got in good shape, and ended up being Chuck, our number one D-midi by the end of his senior year?
Yeah, definitely. Me and DK were talking about that the other day, but yeah, for sure. He was a Fogo for the first 2.5, 3 years, and then became our first line D mid. Him and Lubin just crushed it last year, kind of out of nowhere. So yeah, definitely.
Even when he wasn't, playing, he was always on the sidelines cheering guys on. He was always the loudest guy. Another guy that came into my mind, another New Yorker, was Connor Bernardo.
Yeah, I was so pissed at myself I didn't say that earlier.
So it's kind of a similar situation to a Flynn, where this named a captain, never got a ton of time out there, but when he did, he was always ready to go. I vividly remember a game against Marist on the road. We could not get anything going offensively. We were down, I think, 7-2 going into the fourth. Bernardo checks in, immediately draws slides on 3 straight possessions that end in goals. So he's another type of kid that, he was ready to go when his number was called.
Yeah, that's actually, he's my top guy, I think. I'm very mad I didn't think about that right away. But that kid is the stuff that he did in 4 years on the field and off the field. In the classroom, he was such a smart kid that worked hard too, and everyone went to him. He was the kind of guy that he was a year younger than me, and if I even ever needed something, I'd always go to that kid. He's definitely one of the most locker room kind of guys you can have, for sure.
He really embraced too the whole true brotherhood and the culture and everything like that. And he was the type of guy that he could get his peers to buy into it. There were some kind of fringe guys in that class, and Connor roped him in and got those guys to buy in. And those guys that he roped in ended up being huge contributors for us on the field. So his contribution to the program goes a long way.
Couple more. Demi Danseglio, another goalie that didn't see the field much, but you needed somebody to move the freshmen in. You needed somebody to show up at a president's council, athletic directors meeting. That kid was just, a great representative of the program in the university. And while never had the time in the field, always showed up. And then a couple guys from the early days that neither one of you, these are more Jamie Hebden questions, but when the program first started, you had all these transfers, you had all these guys that were going to get recruited over. They transferred in from a Western Michigan, they transferred in from a Michigan State or this kind of stuff, or they committed out of high school and, but they were going to get recruited over, and they didn't become cancers about it, or they took their D-midi role. And so Brad Janer from CC, I think his first name was John Bemben out of Heartland, and then Chris Nemus also out of CC. And I think Nemus argued as one of those honorable mention second-team midfield guys if we took Troy and Garippa out of the D-midi second-team midfield thing. Nemus had a solid career. Nemus was really consistent, didn't have huge numbers, but was a great leader, great locker room guy, great, on the field. I think those three definitely would be on my they're not going to get mentioned on the all-decade team, but do need to get recognized for being some of those guys at the first part of the program that said, sure, I'm going to go to Detroit, and why not? Let's build a program.
Yeah, Nemus is a great one. And then another one kind of in that time period, Tyler Corcoran did a lot of he did a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, whether it was, ordering our swag packages before we had a legitimate sponsorship. We had to go rogue like Pirates, ordering our helmet decals. He was always doing those little extra things that that no one wanted to do, but needed to get done.
Another Grosse Pointe kid, right?
I think South Lyon.
South Lyon. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. I think you're right. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean, as much fun as we're having with the all-decade stuff, I just think some of these guys that have been so important to the program over the years, we do need to recognize.
Chris Perry, another one, another really good glue guy.
And you know, the thing about talking about these guys is that, you know, one thing that I've noticed in my involvement with the program is, you know, these guys are there because they love the game, right? And these are guys that and for the program as a whole, I mean, I think that's one thing that Chris Colin does very well is you get guys that want it, they love the game, whether they're going to play or not, they're going to be a part of something. And you know, it's infectious, right? You get in there with guys who love the game, who want to play. And it grows from there.
Yeah, you gotta love it if you're taking a 12-hour bus ride to Poughkeepsie
Right.
in
Exactly.
36 hours.
12. What's the Georgia run? What's when you go down and play Mercer?
Oh, I was spoiled. I never had to take the bus to Georgia. I got the first class flying experience, but I think it's like 17 or 18.
You know, it's funny you mentioned Perry too, because when I saw kids coming in from Eisenhower, I didn't think anything of this Chuck Hayes kid. I thought Perry was going to be the stud. You know, big football player, and his highlight reel was ridiculous. You know, it didn't work out on the field for Perry as much as we hoped it would. I see him all over LinkedIn. He's killing it as a realtor right now, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you, again, kind of like Higgins on Pauly, if you would have asked me, okay, Drouin, who's going to be the guy that's going to be legendary in the history of the program, Chris Perry or Chuck Hayes? I would have said, who's Chuck Hayes? He plays for us?
Yeah.
I would have been a moron.
Yeah. Perry, he was always he was always there for the guys. He was a great friend, really good teammate. You know, he went through some stuff and had and battled to, you know, be a key member of the team towards the end of it. So yeah, I definitely gotta mention him.
I think someday I need to have kind of a coaches roundtable too, and go grab guys like Carwick, grab guys like Carl Zimmerman, grab guys like Billy Kozera. You know, some of those guys that I don't need to talk to Holtz and Colin more, but grab some of those guys in the other roles that have now gone other places and get their take on some of these guys that really coached them up and have some good stories to tell. Love to see Brother Carl down at Trine whenever I got to do his games. So that's always fun.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right, we went an hour and a half. We normally try to keep these at an hour, but
90 minutes.
Who cares? It's us and we're having fun.
Now, I do have to say this, though. I mean, I don't know if there were any broadcasters before me, and if there were or were not, that means that I'm default on the, you know, as the broadcaster, right? Or no?
Top five. For sure, top five.
All right, good.
Yeah, you crack it, Locy. Yeah, I think you're up there.
It's a short window. I mean, it just started here, so I got to get a little longevity. As we talked about with some of the other players who got injured, I just started late in the decade. So I'm looking forward to the next 10 years to solidify that first team broadcaster.
Locy, let's put you on the spot. Give me your number one UDM game that you've called that you can remember.
Ooh.
That's a good question.
You know, here's the thing. The games that I've done, it's always been cold and, you know, so windy with that tent. I mean, I've been telling Cole, I'm like, can we just start raising money for a booth? I mean, if I get a booth, then I got more things going. And this year we had, we had night games. Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, off the top of my head, I don't know. I mean, I really enjoyed the night game this year. I mean, that was fun.
Locy, hold on.
What?
I have no sympathy for you. Do you know how many years
What?
I had to run the table without penalty minutes on the board?
Yeah, but that's you. I mean, yeah.
Nothing like having guys like Carwick turn around and scream at you, how much time? And you're going, 42
That's what you signed up for, man.
32 seconds.
No. That's what you signed up for. I roll in. I'm decked out. I'm a talent. I got to bring the talent to the table and get set up, and then I roll, and then I'm out. That's it.
Just like we've evolved from bus rides to Georgia to plane flights to Georgia, we gotta evolve to the tent to a booth.
Hey, they've come a long way from just
nice.
having a camera in the box with me and actually having a scissor lift for it. So, and now we have an official
Got
scoreboard
lights. The lights. I'm telling you, I was so psyched for the I wasn't happy with the game itself, you know, but the atmosphere with the lights and the great all the home games we lost this year. I was so ticked.
Yeah.
So ticked. It was going to be my full, nice, big year. We're going to get some warm games. And gosh darn it.
I know.
Stupid bacteria.
Yeah.
They did a lot of home games.
I know. Like 7 home games or 6 home games. It was the most ever.
And then and one of the road games was ESPNU.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah. Still not happy about it. But, yeah, I guess if we're going to put Locy on if there's a 14th spot for broadcaster, I get a spot as game day operations. All right? Nobody has run the table for more games. Nobody has yelled at by more visiting coaches. Nobody has gotten you guys more calls working the refs, bringing them water in between quarters.
Longevity. You get the
It's
longevity.
a true home field advantage when you walk in and you see Drouin at midfield. You know, we're going to get some calls that game.
Hey, you know, I never did anything unethical, but I'll tell you this. If I brought those guys water and they looked, you know, they were having a conversation, and I'll say this as a hypothetical. I know it's going to be hard for you to imagine this. If they hypothetically said, you know, that Alex Maney needs to shut his mouth. If he says something to me one more time, I'm running him. Again, hypothetically, I would be able to go back and go, hey, you need to tell Maney to shut the hell up. He's, you know, it's kind of like having the refs mic'd up. I might have been out there to get a little information, but it wasn't like I was out there lobbying calls for you guys.
You're a facilitator. You're just facilitating information from point A to point B. That's all you are.
Okay. And you know what? And even I would even say this to all the refs when, you know, I'd go out there and greet them before the game. Guys, if you got something important to talk about, tell me to get the hell out of here. Because I'd bring them water, and you'd have guys that know me that would be like, all right, Drouin, he's saying they weren't offsides. What'd you see? And right or wrong, I'd tell them the honest answer. Oh, yeah, you guys had the right call. Colin was wrong. You guys were offsides. You know, I would tell them what I saw. I would never lie about that. But at the same time, guys like Dana Friend would, you know, just say to them, hey, if you guys are going to talk about something, you don't want me here, tell me to beat it. I'll give you the water. I'll give you a game ball. I'll hang out and I'll wait till you guys call me back in, hand me the bottles, I'll grab the sticks at the timeout, bring them back to the huddles. But you know, the refs knew that if they were going to talk about something that wasn't for my ears, you know, I'm a Niloa guy. They know me. I know them. They know I'm a fan of Detroit Mercy first rather than just a game administrator. So, yeah, we had a good relationship on that.
Well, it's been a blast.
All right, boys. Stay safe. JD, I feel bad for you missing your first season as head coach.
Not over yet, JD. So that's not done yet, buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, I got some news for you. Georgia, Florida, and another state just opened for high school sports. So
I think Arizona.
You got to drive.
We got all the time in the world. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge bummer for sure. I'm especially bummed for the seniors, obviously, the fact that they're losing a season. But we had a good senior class, and I really do think that we were going to sneak up on some people and make some noise. But, you know.
Are you going to do anything? I mean, you know, with the MHSA saying June 1st, you know, you as a coach can coach your team from June 1st to July 31st. You know, obviously we got the social distancing piece with Miss Whitmer up in Lansing. But I mean, if we're good to go sometime in June, are you going to get the guys together and try to do some of those tournaments or anything like that?
Yeah, we have. I mean, I've put together a full summer plan that involves practices and going to some events, and I would love to schedule some play dates with any team that wants to do it. I just want to get these guys games. So, yeah, if we get a green light, we're going to be guns a-blazing doing as much as we can.
Real quick, love for your coaching staff. Because it's all good young guys, right?
The coaching staff?
Yeah.
So we have Will Kane running the defensive coordinator. Matt Brewer, who is a Notre Dame prep alum. Tim Robertson, another UDM guy, Notre Dame prep alum. And then Tyler Yannick, Notre Dame prep alum from the previous staff.
Okay. I thought you had more UDM guys on there. Who's your JV coach?
Tyler Yannick.
Okay. Awesome.
Yep. So it's a good staff too. I was fired up about it, but yeah, we'll get something going this summer if we can, and hopefully get those seniors out there to tell the rest of the state what we were going to do.
Awesome. Again, Chuck Hayes, congratulations on your promotion.
Yeah, congrats, Chuck.
Coach at Detroit Mercy.
Thank you.
Jumping on here tonight.
And Chuck, I'm going to want the inside scoop that Colin doesn't tell me. So just understand that's going to be your new role, broadcast.
I got you.
And I'll let one little thing out of the bag. There's a rumor going around that the UDM women's basketball team is looking for a broadcaster, and a certain someone is on the short list of people they want to talk to.
Hey.
This
I
guy.
like that.
There we go.
Hey, I know hoops. I mean, I learned lacrosse. I was born to do hoops.
Grab
Yeah.
basketball, baby.
They don't want you doing men's?
One step at a time.
Yep.
I love the ladies' game. The
Oh, I love women's hoops.
tacticians out there.
Yeah, oh yeah.
All right. So we're going to sign off. Just want to say, Alex Maney, hi. You suck. We miss you. And anyone else, feedback, tweet at us. Join US Lacrosse, uslacrosse.org/join. We'll tag UDM Lax. We'll tag Coach Hebden. We'll tag Coach Hayes and all that other. We'll tag Max Locy. And do not send complaints on this list to Colin or Holtz. It's not their list. It's the program's list. That's my final parting shot. Good.
And a tribute to Chris Colin as well. Tribute
Amen.
to Chris Colin out there. So, all right, guys.